Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Alicia with Divine Liberty Purpose. And in this burnout series, I want to talk about the high cost of being the fixer. So picture this. You're sitting in your car with the engine off and you're looking at the dashboard, but you aren't really seeing it. And you're kind of in a daze or you're zoning out. And you're in your driveway, or maybe you just pulled up in the parking lot at work, or maybe you're sitting in front of a family member's house and you're just staring. This is your mini reset, right? It's the time for you to claim and steal a couple minutes for yourself before you have to go and switch it on. You are gathering your strength because you know the moment that you open your door, it's time to be the one that handles all the crises, right? You're the one who makes sure that everyone is okay and that nothing is going to fall apart. Being a hero was never the goal, but somehow becoming the fixer has become the role. And now it's just what you do. And it's who people expect you to be now because of your reliability and your dependability. If this feels familiar to you, then stay right here. All right. So the last time we talked about the identity crisis that comes with burnout, because being the fixer isn't just a role now. Somehow it's become a mask that we've worn so long that it starts to feel like a second skin. So every single yes that you've said out of guilt or emotion is a part of you being chiseled away each and every time. Every single time you say yes, it's an emotional loan that cannot be paid back. And when becoming capable and being the dependable one becomes your primary currency that you're exchanging, the cost of living goes up each and every single day. And there's a requirement to be even sharper or faster or more reliable than everyone else just to stay relevant and to stay needed. You know, we all want to stay and remain needed, right? That's just how we feel. But this really is the weight of being the go-to person in every single space. And for many of us, that weight is all we've known for decades. And we've spent our whole lives in the hustle and bustle of life. And for some, it could be raising kids or managing your household. For others, it may be climbing a career ladder and being the anchor for your family. But then something happens, life shifts, the kids leave the nest, your career comes with a change, or maybe you're nearing retirement, or there's an abrupt layoff or something like that. And there's a major transition that moves us out of the environment that we're used to being in so control of, right? And so when those things stop, you realize that you are starting to lose the sound of your own voice. And you can navigate a crisis for a friend or meet a deadline with a boss with your eyes closed. But if someone asked you what you need or what makes you happy right now, it's hard for you to come up with an answer for that, right? It just seems like a blank space. And, you spent so much time being the solution for others that you've forgotten that you are a person yourself who deserves to be cared for too. And so you aren't just tired, you are homesick for a version of yourself that you haven't seen in years. And so I want to talk about the three pitfalls of being the fixer. And interestingly enough, staying in the red, and when I say red, we're talking about that high stress zone. It actually starts to feel safe because as long as there's a fire to put out, there's no time to feel what that emptiness feels like if you're not actively doing something. And as long as there's a problem to solve, you don't have to face being quiet. And so the green zone, I like to call that the place of peace, right? So it feels like a foreign country, actually. So putting that weight down is actually an act of courage because it means that you're finally meeting the person underneath all of that armor. And it's easy to stay exhausted and needed than to be rested and unknown. But we got to realize that being capable and a reliable one can sometimes become a cage. It can become very restricting and restrictive. And it's built from three specific pitfalls that we often ignore. And the first one is the enabler trap. And so think of this as constantly catching all the balls and all the responsibilities and things that prevents others from ever learning how to hold their own weight, right? If you're always quick to jump in and to take a problem from them, then how are they going to learn a lesson from this? So to us, it might feel like help, right? But it's actually an interruption of their growth. Now, when the fixer always steps in, the lesson steps out. So by fixing that problem, it becomes way comfortable for others to stay exactly where they are and never move forward to the next step. And so ask yourself, is it really love to keep someone else weak? just so we can feel relevant and needed? Just think about it next time. The second one is the isolation of being capable, right? So looking like you can always handle everything means that nobody thinks to even ask if you are struggling with anything. They assume that everything is always fine because you're so well put together and everything always looks fine. Your capability becomes a wall that keeps people out. And it is quite possible to be surrounded by people that depend on you, yet you never feel so more alone because nobody is looking out for the person who is always looking out for everyone else. So who's looking out for the fixer? Seriously, who is looking out for the fixer? And number three, I often sit here sometimes too, and it's called the resentment burn. And this isn't about looking for sympathy. It's about the quiet, right? The heavy bitterness that grows when you realize that now you become a victim of your own reliability. It's the frustration of knowing that because you can do it all, everyone expects you to do it all. You begin to resent the very people that you love because their needs have now become your to-do list. And so now I want to talk about this a little bit from a biblical lens, right? And I want to contextualize this in spotters versus backpacks. And so this is where that confusion often begins, right? Especially when we look at how we're called to always show up for one another. And there's a common misunderstanding in the book of Galatians, chapter 6 and 2, which says, carry each other's burdens. This is often heard as a mandate to be responsible for every problem that crosses our path. But think of it like a spotter in the gym that's serving or helping someone who's lifting weights. When there's a weight that is about to crush someone, it could be seen as a crisis or a tragedy or a moment that this person cannot physically survive alone. And so what that spotter does is he or she steps in to try to lift that burden off of the chest of the person that's lifting the weights. And that is the assignment. However, in Galatians 6 and 5, it clarifies that for each one should carry their own load. So with helping with burdens, that doesn't mean carrying someone full load for them, right? It means that, you can help, but it shouldn't come to the point where they're alleviated of all responsibility. So each person should be willing to carry their own backpack. And that often is the fixer's struggle, right? Is often carrying someone else's backpack while already acting as a spotter for a crisis. So when you take that load that doesn't belong to you, it isn't an act of love. Although we see it that way, it's an act of interference. And God gives us grace for assignments, but he does not provide grace for us always taking backpacks, either willingly or unwillingly, from someone else. And so how do we actually step out, right? How do we actually reclaim that space? And I'll give you three specific steps, right? The first one is deconstruct the expectation. So we must admit to ourselves that the world will not stop spinning if the fixing stops. If things fall apart because if we aren't the ones holding it together, or if we are the only ones holding it together, then it really wasn't built on a solid foundation anyway, and that it actually needed to break. So we got to deconstruct that expectation that if we stop doing what we're doing, that the world is going to stop spinning. Because most times those people will probably move on to someone else that will fix their problem. Okay. The second one is detach your worth from that service. Detach your worth from that service. And so this is about your soul. This is about your spirit. It means practice being unavailable for non-emergencies and spending time doing something that benefits your soul and your peace, right? We are human beings, not human doings. And I could say sometimes that, I've been a little unavailable. I've been unavailable at work. People like to come to me at work as they see me as the go-to person that, probably because I've been there for a little while and I kind of know the intricacies of how things work. But sometimes I just get tired. I get tired of people coming and asking me all these questions, and I just have to just go disappear, go do something I want to do, or just simply become unavailable. Because if I'm always the one that's giving them the answers for everything, then that takes away their ability to resource information for themselves, right? So sometimes you just got to be unavailable. And then the third one is delegating that responsibility. This is giving people back their own backpack, and it's an act of respect to say, "Hey, I believe you capable of handling this. I think you got the right tools, and I think you got the right mindset to take this on yourself." And so I just want to share that for me personally in my own transition that eh, I'm going through an identity shift. And the message that I'm receiving at work is, "Hey, Alicia, it's okay to fail." Now, to a fixer and a high performer, that sounds real foreign to say that, hey, it's okay to fail. But over the past couple of weeks, I've been kind of practicing something a little new. So when a problem is presented to me that belongs to someone else, my reply is simply, "Hey, that's outside of my scope." Or, "Hey, I recommend we redirect this to the appropriate proponent." And that proponent is not me, right? And so what that sounds like in life, right? It might sound like, "Hey, I can't. Hey, I don't have the emotional bandwidth to take this on right now. But I'm happy to support you. I'm happy to cheer you on while you handle it, but I got enough going on right now. I can't focus on that." And so while it feels strange to take a step back when you see someone maybe struggling or you see them dealing with something, it's kind of hard to just sit back and watch that, but it's worth it to clear your spirit and to help move yourself out of that red zone, which is that stressful zone, over to the green zone, which is that peaceful zone. And so before you guys lock in on the next episode, I want you to do something for me. I want you to look at your to-do list and I want you to find one thing that's outside of your scope. And I want you to ask yourself, am I acting as a spotter, or am I taking on someone's backpack? Ask yourself that. Once that backpack is handed back, something happens. Our hands are finally empty, right? And for a fixer, someone who's used to always doing everything for everybody else, empty hands are the most uncomfortable feeling in the world. But it's only in that space and in that emptiness is where you have the room to receive something new. So we got to stop picking up other people's problems, man. And so next time we're going to talk about that quiet after you start saying no. What do we do with that silence when we stop being the go-to person, or when we hand people back their backpacks? How do we rebuild a life that isn't defined by what we do, but by who we are becoming? And I want you to know that availability is not a requirement for wholeness. It's a distraction from it. Let that sink in and really think about it. Being available all the time is not a requirement for your wholeness. For you to be whole, a part of that is being unavailable to other folks. So availability is not a requirement for wholeness. It is a distraction from it. In order for you to remain whole, you gotta stop being available for everybody. Think about it. I'll leave that with you. This is Alicia from Divine Living with Purpose, and I'll meet you right there next time.